What's going on, everybody? It's Clint from the Die Hard MMA podcast. This is the Total Takedown, where we're breaking down UFC Vegas 35 from a totals perspective, over, under, how long we think these fights are going to last. The show is sponsored by Pub Sports Radio. Make sure you hit that like button for me. Subscribe if you haven't already. Let's get straight on into the show. We got a lot going on this week, so I'm going to try and hustle on through this one. First fight of the night, Mana Martinez taking on Guido Canetti. And I need to get my props up here so I can actually know what I'm talking about. Total here looks like it's set at 2.5. I'm sorry, 1.5. Total set at 1.5. Over is minus 115. The under minus 105. You can get even money plus 100 on the under 1.5 rounds in certain spots. Completely agree with the violence bet here. This is one of those spots where Guido Canetti, he's 8-6. He's practically a 500 fighter at this point. He's almost 40 years old. He looked awful his last time out. He got knocked out. He's taken on Mana Martinez, a fighter that a lot of people are really high on, a finisher, a killer, a round one monster. And yeah, maybe Guido Canetti can use his grappling. Maybe he can extend the fight a little bit. But if he doesn't do some serious damage to Mana Martinez, this kid is never going to stop coming forward. And I think Guido Canetti's at the point where he's about ready to hang him up. I think this is Mana Martinez's first round, and besides the offensive Mana Martinez, on the flip side of this thing, Guido Canetti's helping us because he's shown a little bit of durability, shakiness, a little bit of durability problems, and because of that, he is contributing to an under. 1.5's kind of sketch me out, especially when we're talking about Bantamweight, because the smaller divisions, not as easy to get finishes. But I feel like this fight has violence written all over it. I do think Mana Martinez just kind of walks Guido Canetti down and runs through him in this particular fight. So kind of picking a side here. I apologize for that, but I do think the under 1.5 is the way to go. Second fight of the night, Jamall Emmers taking on Pat Sabatini. Total in this one here is set at 2.5. The over is juiced to minus 220. The under is plus 180. And I completely agree with this line. So Jamall Emmers is a guy that solid wrestling, very good grappler, but he likes to use his striking. He likes to play on the feet. Pat Sabatini, very strong grappler, good jiu-jitsu guy, good submissions. That's going to be tough to get on a guy like Jamall Emmers. And then when they're striking, Jamall Emmers is going to have to be conscious of the takedown. Pat Sabatini has good range, good movement, and good durability. I don't see really much of a finish from either of these guys. I think Jamall Emmers uses his wrestling in reverse, keeps this thing standing, and then they have a 15-minute kickboxing match with some specks of grappling sprinkled in there. I would look for this thing to go over. Women's flyweight fight coming up next. J.J. Aldrich taking on Vanessa Demopoulos. Total here set at 2.5. The over is minus 320. The under is plus 260. And this is one of those spots that has me kind of scratching my head just a little bit. We talk always about how women's fights, they are juiced to the overs. And every once in a while, an opportunity shows up where you can take advantage of that and take a stab on that under. This might be one of those spots here because Vanessa Demopoulos is not a UFC caliber fighter. She's 6-3, and she's moving up a weight class on short notice. She did have a fight coming up this weekend, but it was not a UFC level fight. So she is in shape. She's training at Fight Ready. Those are all good things for her. But the size difference is going to be a problem. JJ never has a size difference over anybody, and now she's going to have a decent one over Vanessa. JJ has also been working with the champion Rose Namajunas, so you can't get much better training or a training partner than that, and I expect her to have a huge advantage in the striking realm. Vanessa Demopoulos can snap somebody's arm off from guard. She's a good grappler. She scrambles well, good submissions, but I think that J.J. Aldrich working with Rose, who's maybe the best grappler in the division, is going to be more than prepared for that. I think there's a good opportunity for an early finish from the explosive Vanessa Demopoulos. If she doesn't catch JJ with an arm or something like that, then JJ is going to work her in this fight. She's going to absolutely put it on her on the feet, and I think there's a chance J.J. Aldrich can finish either by knockout or by submission just by being the bigger, more experienced, higher level fighter. This is a spot where I might take a flyer on the under 2.5 because that line is juicy, and both women absolutely are capable of getting that finish. Lightweight fight coming up next. Light heavyweight fight coming up next. Dustin Jacoby taking on Darren the Dentist Stewart. And I've been going back and forth on this one all week. This is a really tough fight to call in my opinion. Over 2.5, minus 175. Under 2.5 is plus 155. So we're getting an opportunity for violence. But these are a couple 185ers who are masquerading up at 205. They're going to have some more gas in the tank. How will that power translate? Not so sure that it necessarily will, but both their durabilities, that's definitely going to be improved because they're not cutting nearly as much weight here for this fight. We know Dustin Jacoby, great striker. Darren Stewart, a guy that's got heavy, heavy hands, but he's been relying on his grappling a lot lately, and people tend to grapple him to avoid striking with him. Dustin Jacoby's not that guy. Dustin Jacoby is going to welcome a striking affair, and Darren Stewart's pissed off. He doesn't want to go to the judges. He's talked about it, back against the wall. I think he's going to come out here looking for blood, and if that's the case, there's some value here on that under. We got plus 115, I'm sorry, plus 155, plus 130 on the under 2.5 here in this spot, and I think that's kind of the way that I would look if I was going to play this one. I'm not planning on having this fight on my ticket, but if I was going to look at it, I'd be looking at violence, because Dustin Jacoby can destroy Darren Stewart on the feet. Stewart obviously can knock out just about anybody on the feet if he gets the right shot, and I don't expect a whole lot of grappling here. So if we get a 15-minute stand-up affair from these guys, I think somebody could potentially go down. We've seen a chink in Darren Stewart's armor lately. He's been durable. He's been untouchable. You can't finish this guy. He got shaken up real bad by my boy Eric Anders. So that's maybe a little bit out the window. He's taken a lot of punishment, and maybe it's finally caught up to him. Who knows? Again, not one that I'm super confident on, not one I'm planning on betting. Middleweight fight up next, Sam Alvey taking on Wellington Turman. My boy Smiling Sam making a comeback. Total here set at 2.5. The over is minus 110. The under is juiced ever so slightly, minus 120 to the under 2.5. And man, I absolutely think the under is the play here. So Smiling Sam, he's a guy that carries a light heavyweight power down at 185. He can knock anybody out. Wellington Turman's a guy that's shown to be very, very chinny, making a quick turnaround, coming off a bad knockout loss just a couple of short months ago, and he's getting back in there with a guy that's desperate and has heavy hands. Sam Alvey's really going to need to let it go this fight. I know he's been a little bit low volume, but Wellington Turman is a grappler. He's a guy that's going to push it, and he's going to try to get in there on Sam Alvey, and Alvey can knock people out in the third round. So even if Wellington does have some success early, if he can't keep it up for 15 minutes, he's eventually going to get hit. Now, if Wellington Turman can get Sam Alvey to the mat, Sam Alvey has been submitted before. He's very competent. He's a good wrestler. He's got a good get-up game and good takedown defense, so I don't think Turman's going to have a whole lot of success in that realm. But if he were to have success in that realm, he absolutely can tap Sam Alvey. So I think there's violence on both sides of this thing, and I think the under 2.5 at about a pick 'em price tag, that's a swinging deal. I might actually end up adding that one to my card, even though I'm already on Sam Alvey. Middleweight fight to close out the preliminary portion of the evening. Alessio Di Chirico taking on Abdul Razak Alhassan. And this is another fight that's very polarizing in my opinion. Total here set at 2.5. The over is minus 110. The under is minus 125. So juiced again ever so slightly to the under 2.5 here in this spot, and I kind of agree with that. Abdul Razak, obviously, big fall from grace from this guy, but extremely dangerous in that first round. Always explosive and dangerous in round one. Alessio Di Chirico, very well-rounded, very durable, very tough and gritty. This is a spot where if Alessio Di Chirico survives that first round, I think he just starts to put it on Abdul Razak Alhassan. Now, if he's smart, grappling is going to be the way to go on that, but we've seen him more than capable of kickboxing with high-level fighters as well. I think Abdul Razak Alhassan's method to victory here is that first round finish. He's always live for that. And then if he doesn't get that, he's fighting up a weight class against Alessio Di Chirico, who's really streaking at this point, looking really good, got some finishes on his record, big-time ground advantage. I think there's a chance Alessio Di Chirico can finish this thing in the second or the third round once Abdul Razak slows a little bit after that initial explosion. So, again, I'd be looking for violence. Under 2.5 would be the spot for me. Middleweight's up next. Makhmud Muradov taking on Gerald Meerschaert. And what is there to say about this fight? Total is set at 1.5 on this one. Over is minus 125. Under is plus 100. So juiced slightly to the over 1.5. And I would have to say, I guess I would take the over 1.5. The only problem is Gerald Meerschaert's a guy that's been shown to be chinny. He's incredibly dangerous on the ground. So if he gets the grappling and jiu-jitsu going, he definitely could be dangerous on the mat and pose serious problems for Makhmud Muradov. But, if Makhmud Muradov is the guy that we think he is, and he absolutely is, he's just an incredible striker with another big right hand, and that's been the problem for Gerald Meerschaert this entire time. He's been knocked out by his past two opponents by a right hand. He seems to have a problem with defense for that exact offense, and I think Makhmud Muradov is going to get him out of there eventually. It's just a matter of when. He's a guy that likes to start slow, feel it out, ramp the pace up. He finishes people in the third round pretty regularly when they just can't keep up pace with him anymore. This is a spot where We expect Makhmud to knock Gerald Meerschaert out, but we kind of expect it a little bit later. Maybe he just gets ants in his pants and comes out hard this time and decides to put Gerald Meerschaert away early. I would hate to lay -125 on an over 1.5 and then have this guy come out and decide he wants to make a statement and just flatline Gerald Meerschaert early. So I'm not betting this one. I'm going to say over 1.5. I think that third round knockout once again materializes because that's just kind of what Makhmud Muradov does. Middleweight fight. Now we're talking Ultimate Fighter finalists. Andre Petroski taking on Micheal Gillmore. And this is another one that's just incredibly polarizing. Everyone seems to be on the same side here. Petroski's already up to a -600 favorite in certain spots. Total set at 1.5. The under is -140. The over is +110. And basically, Gilmore has a problem with the takedown. Gilmore has a problem with his submission defense. And that's all Andre does, is take people down and choke them out. So this is a spot where everybody's expecting Andre. Everybody's expecting Andre round 1 submission. And you can only find value by going against the grain. If you line up with everybody else and you agree with everybody in the world, the bets are going to be chalked to hell. Like in this example, we've got a -600 favorite and a -140 to the under 1.5. So if you think along the lines of everybody else, I mean, I do too, but you can't bet that, right? Like, I got to pick the under 1.5 because that's the obvious path to victory. But if Micheal Gillmore makes even any type of improvements or puts up any kind of a fight whatsoever and this thing squeezes over that 1.5, would I be surprised? No. No, I would not be. So I'm going to pick the under 1.5 at -140, but again, not a fight that I'm planning on betting. Welterweight fight, maybe my most anticipated fight. No, not maybe. Definitely my most anticipated fight on this card. The return of Kevin Lee taking on Daniel Rodriguez. Total in this one set at 2.5. The over is -145, it looks like. The under +115. And I'd be looking at violence here in this spot. Kevin Lee is a guy that most of his wins are by finish. He almost never wins by decision. Most of his losses are by finish as well because he tends to look for the door when he ends up getting exhausted and outclassed. Now, he can go 15 minutes, and this is a 3-round fight, so I wouldn't be shocked for him to be able to put together a grappling-heavy performance for just 15 straight minutes. Daniel Rodriguez is a guy with those hands, that aggression, that speed, his wicked submission offense. He is dangerous, even though he ends up going 15 minutes a lot because he has kind of that low-power, high-volume boxing style. He hurts people, but he doesn't get them out of there super early. I don't think he's going to finish Kevin Lee early. I think if he's going to finish Lee, it would come late. However, if Lee is going to win this thing, he can finish basically at any point in time in this fight. He comes out like a bat out of hell. He can knock people out. He can submit people. He can take people down and grind on them until they give something up. Lee's got absolutely all the options available to him here. Daniel Rodriguez is going to need to defend the takedown, get back up to his feet, and then pepper Lee until he gets tired with shots or catch him with a guillotine or something when he's coming in. Those are really the paths to victory I see for D-Rod. So I would be looking for the violent side of things here. Either Kevin Lee gives out at some point and breaks, and Daniel Rodriguez, the true 170-pounder, puts it on him, or Kevin Lee comes back from a long layoff, is speaking truth, and shows us everything he's been working on for the past year or so, and we see a new 170-pound version of a title contender at 155 who's had some time to heal and some time to improve and grow, and he really comes out and makes a statement because he's looking for a title run. That would both lead me to the under 2.5 here in this spot. So I'd be looking for violence personally. Bantamweight fight here. Ricky Turcios taking on Brady Hiestand. This one's sketchy, folks. Total set here at 2.5. The over is -185. The under is +160. So in this spot, bookie's definitely expecting this one to go over, and I kind of have to agree here. Brady is a kid that focuses on his grappling. He likes to stay in your face. He's ultra aggressive, makes you work, uses his grappling, tries to grind on you. Ricky Turcios is a guy that likes to scramble. He'll play off of his back, good offensive submissions, high volume on the feet, kind of Max Holloway-esque with the way his striking just overwhelms people over the course of the fight on his feet. So these guys are going to go head-to-head, and I think that neither one of them is going down early. Neither of them has that, first round disgusting finishing power that would close the show super early or anything like that. So because of that, I'm kind of thinking this fight gets extended. And if these guys both have a chance to scramble, they have a chance to move, then it does get to the second round. It does get to the third round. And I do think it gets to the judges' scorecards, and it's a close, hairy decision, and it makes me super nervous about my Ricky Turcios bet after I've put a little bit more effort into breaking this fight down. But the one thing that is keeping me off of any of this and not hedging out of my Ricky Turcios bet is that we've seen Brady hurt. We've seen Brady gas. We've seen Brady slow down. Ricky Turcios doesn't do any of those things. He steps on the gas. He keeps going on his opponents. He causes scrambles. When his opponents wilt, he comes on stronger. And because of that, I think he's going to have a serious advantage in the second and the third rounds as long as he survives one round with Brady and gets out of there unscathed. So I think this fight could finish in that third round. And if we're talking 2.5 rounds, you need to get over 2 minutes and 30 seconds of that third round to cash the ticket. I'm not laying minus 185 to get over 2.5 rounds and pray that neither of these guys breaks or gives out in the second or third. So definitely I would expect it to go over, but there's enough red flags to keep me off of making any kind of a play on it. Co-main event, Bryan Battle taking on Gilbert Urbina. Total set at 2.5. Over is minus 155. The under is plus 120. And again, I'd be looking violence here. Gilbert is a person that we have seen struggle with offensive aggression. We've seen him get hurt. We've seen him get rocked. And he really relies on sticking to his opponent. He really relies on making sure he's constantly forcing takedowns and grappling. Bryan Battle, on the other hand, this guy looks for offense constantly. He wants to hurt you in every position possible, and he's constantly doing that. So if he can defend even a little bit from Gilbert Urbina's takedowns, or if Gilbert slows down in the second round, something along those lines, Bryan Battle is just going to have an absolute day on the feet. He's going to go to town. So I don't see Gilbert Urbina putting up much of a fight against Bryan Battle. I think Bryan Battle is going to finish Gilbert, and if Gilbert does win this thing, it's going to have to be early when he's dry, when he's fresh, and when he can choke this guy out. So I do think the under 2.5 violence plus 120 would be the way to go if you're looking to play the co-main event. Main event time, one of the hottest debated fights we've had in a long time here. Edson Barboza taking on Giga Chikadze. Total set here at, it looks like 4.5. The over 4.5 is plus 105. The under 4.5 is minus 125. And I completely agree with that line. This is going to be primarily a kickboxing fight with two of the biggest strikers in the division. These guys kick harder than anybody. They both have finished people. We got the Giga kick on one side. We got Barboza, who can take people out with leg kick, body kick, head kick. He holds the UFC record for that. I mean, these guys are phenomenal. And what we've seen is Edson Barboza fully capable of going 25 minutes. We have not seen Giga Chikadze after that third round. That's not to say that he can't do it, but we have seen him get tired and slow down in the third round. So I think because of that, Giga's going to need to get a finish, and he's going to need to get it sooner than later, because if he doesn't, Barboza's going to break this guy in the championship rounds. So I'm thinking violence. I'm thinking under 4.5 is definitely the way to go. Giga maybe lands a liver kick or something like that early on Edson, or Edson gets him out of there once he decides to slow down, because Barboza is more than capable of going a full 25, and if anything at featherweight, he looks better than he ever has before. So I definitely would be looking violence, and that's a bet that I might actually add to my card here. That's the Total Takedown, folks. Make sure you subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio. Hit me in the comment section below with your favorite total bet. Hit me up at Diehard MMA Pod on Twitter with any questions, concerns, anything like that, and good freaking luck. Let's roll.